The numbers told the truth before anyone did. I balanced our books every Thursday after dinner when the house was quiet and Michael was upstairs reading to our daughter. The ritual began 6 years into our marriage, me at the kitchen table with the laptop open, a cup of tea cooling beside the mouse, sorting receipts into folders with names like Groceries, Utilities, Emma's School, Misc. The refrigerator hummed its steady white noise. The clock above the sink read 9:17, same as always. I liked the order of it. The predictability. Numbers didn't lie or forget or change their minds halfway through a sentence. They simply were. That Thursday in October, the spreadsheet loaded the way it always did. Clean columns, color-coded rows, formulas I'd written 3 years prior that still worked perfectly. I didn't expect anything different. I never did. But there it was, 5 lines down in the income section. My salary, the direct deposit from the firm where I'd worked for 8 years, reclassified from salary, primary to consulting, Misc. I stared at it. Then I refreshed the page. It stayed. I told myself it was a mistake. Banks make errors. Software glitches. Someone at the firm changed something in payroll. Reasonable explanations existed. But my hands were cold, and I couldn't remember why that mattered. Only that they were, and that the kitchen suddenly felt too large around me. This isn't fiction. This is how love disappears. One small correction at a time. The world before that evening was ordinary in the way a good marriage should be. We lived in a 3-bedroom house on a street with old maples that turned violent shades of orange each fall. Michael worked in software development from home, his office the converted sunroom where he spent most days on video calls wearing dress shirts and sweatpants, a joke between us that never got old. Emma was 7, gap-toothed and relentless, the kind of child who asked questions that started with, "But why?" and never accepted the first answer. We had routines. Saturday mornings, I made pancakes while Michael walked Emma to the corner store for the newspaper he never read but insisted on buying. Weeknights, we took turns with bedtime stories. Sundays, we pretended we'd go for a hike, then ordered takeout and watched something mindless on the couch. We bickered about small things, who forgot to buy milk, whose turn it was to call the plumber, whether Emma needed a tutor or just needed to try harder. Normal friction, the kind that meant we were still rubbing against each other, still there. I loved him. Not the breathless way I had at 23 when we met at a conference in Minneapolis, but the deeper, quieter kind that comes from building something together. He knew how I took my coffee. I knew he couldn't sleep without the ceiling fan on. We had history, we had a daughter, we had a mortgage and a joint checking account and a 10-year plan that involved paying off my student loans and maybe buying a cabin up north someday. I didn't know then that I'd been logging my own erasure in tidy columns for weeks. The first time I saw the reclassification, I convinced myself it meant nothing. Michael came downstairs 20 minutes later, kissed the top of my head, asked if I wanted more tea. I said no. He poured himself water from the tap and leaned against the counter, scrolling through his phone. "Emma wants a hamster," he said. "Emma wants everything." She made a PowerPoint. "Of course she did." He smiled. I smiled back. Everything was fine. Except I couldn't stop thinking about the line in the spreadsheet. Consulting. Why consulting? My salary came from a law firm where I worked as a financial analyst, a salaried position with benefits and predictable hours. There was no consulting. There was no miscellaneous. There was only the same deposit, twice a month, like clockwork. The next morning, I checked the bank's website directly. The transaction history showed my paycheck deposited as usual. Same amount, same source. But when I downloaded the statement and imported it into our shared budget software, the category changed, automatically, as if something in the system had been taught to rewrite what it saw. I opened the settings, scrolled through the rules Michael and I had built over years of shared finances. There, buried in the conditional formatting section, was a new rule I didn't remember creating. If deposit source contains law firm and amount equals primary salary, reclassify as consulting. Misc. The rule had been added 6 weeks ago. October 1st, a Tuesday. I was at a work conference in Chicago that Tuesday. Michael was home with Emma. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I started looking. It felt shameful at first, this new habit of checking. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I'd find nothing, that there was an explanation so obvious I'd laugh about it later. But every night that week, after Michael went to bed, I opened the laptop in the dim glow of the kitchen and went deeper. The credit card statements showed nothing unusual. Gas, groceries, the subscription services we shared, Emma's piano lessons, the orthodontist deposit we'd been saving for. Everything aligned with the life we were living. Then I checked the secondary account, the one we'd opened 2 years ago for household projects, a kitchen remodel that never happened, then a fence for the backyard we never built. We'd stopped using it, or I thought we had. There were transactions, small ones mostly. Transfers out, $50 or $75 at a time, always on Wednesdays. They went to an account I didn't recognize, a number that didn't match anything in our records. When I clicked through to see the recipient name, it showed only initials, LH Consulting. I sat very still. Consulting. The word felt deliberate now, a category, a shell, a place to hide things that shouldn't be hidden. I checked the dates. The first transfer was in July, the week after our anniversary dinner. We'd gone to the Italian place downtown, the one with the candles and wine bottles and terrible acoustics. We'd laughed. We'd held hands across the table. We'd come home and made love quietly while Emma slept down the hall. And afterward, Michael had whispered that he was grateful for me, for us, for the life we'd built. 2 days later, he made the first transfer. I started noticing other things, small calibrations in the landscape of our marriage that I'd previously attributed to nothing. Michael's phone, which used to sit on the kitchen counter face up, now lived in his pocket or face down on his desk. When it buzzed, he checked it immediately, then put it away without comment. He started running errands alone, quick trips to the hardware store, the pharmacy, the bank. He was gone 20 minutes, maybe 30, and came back with exactly what he'd left for. Nothing suspicious, nothing I could name. But there was a new cologne, just barely. A scent I noticed once when he leaned over me to grab his keys, something cedar and citrus that wasn't the one I'd bought him last Christmas. When I asked about it, he said he'd gotten a sample at the mall. Maybe he had. Probably he had. People get samples. He was gentler with me too, more considerate. He asked how my day was and listened to the answer. He did the dishes without being asked. He bought my favorite wine, the expensive one I usually skipped. It should have felt like love. It felt like apology. One evening in November, Emma asked why Daddy was smiling at his phone. Was he smiling? I asked. He looked happy, she said. Like when we went to Disney. Maybe he saw something funny. He wasn't laughing, though, just smiling. I put her to bed and came downstairs. Michael was on the couch, his phone dark beside him, watching a documentary about deep-sea creatures. I sat next to him. He put his arm around me. We stayed like that for an hour, not speaking, while bioluminescent fish drifted across the screen. I wanted to ask. I couldn't ask. Asking would make it real. The confrontation happened on a Tuesday in late November, 3 days before Thanksgiving. Emma was at a sleepover. The house was too quiet without her, the kind of silence that amplifies every sound, the creak of floorboards, the hum of the heater kicking on, the way Michael's fork scraped against his plate. We'd had dinner, something simple, pasta with jarred sauce. He'd complimented it anyway. We'd talked about whether to host Thanksgiving or drive to his parents' place. Normal conversation. The kind married people have when they're too tired to fight and too comfortable to perform. I was loading the dishwasher when I said it. Who's LH? He was wiping down the counter. His hand stopped, then continued. What? LH Consulting. You've been sending them money since July. He didn't look at me. He folded the dishcloth in half, then in half again. He draped it over the faucet with the precision of someone buying time. It's not what you think. I don't know what I think. That's why I'm asking. He turned around. His face was calm, too calm. The kind of calm that takes effort. Her name is Lauren. She's a consultant I worked with on a project over the summer. I've been helping her with some expenses. She's going through a difficult time. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Not dramatically, just a few degrees, enough to make me question my balance. What kind of expenses? Rent, bills. She lost her job. I was trying to help. For 4 months. Yes. Without telling me. I didn't want you to worry. I closed the dishwasher. The click of the latch was louder than it should have been. Are you sleeping with her? No. Michael. I'm not. But his voice had a hairline fracture in it, a place where the truth was bending under its own weight. Then why did you reclassify my salary as consulting income? He blinked. What? In the budget software, you created a rule to reclassify my paycheck. October 1st. Why? He didn't answer immediately. That silence, 3 seconds, maybe 4, told me everything. I was reorganizing our finances, he said finally. I wanted to separate earned income from other sources. My salary is earned income. I know, I made a mistake. You made a rule. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Not quite guilt, not quite fear, something closer to resignation. The face of someone who knows they've been caught but hasn't decided yet what to confess. I met her in June, he said quietly, at a conference in Denver. We stayed in touch. It started as friendship, then it became something else. The words landed softly. That was the worst part. They didn't shatter anything. They just settled, heavy and irrevocable, in the space between us. Are you in love with her? I don't know. Do you want to leave? I don't know that either. I thought I would cry. I thought I would scream or throw something or collapse into the kind of grief I'd seen in movies. Instead, I felt nothing. A vast, echoless nothing that stretched in all directions. You should sleep in the guest room tonight, I said. He nodded. He left the kitchen. I heard him climb the stairs, heard the door close. Then I stood there, alone in the kitchen we'd renovated together 3 years ago, and listened to the refrigerator hum its indifferent song. The days after were strange in their stillness. Michael moved his things into the guest room. Emma came home from her sleepover and noticed immediately that something was different, though neither of us said what. We told her Daddy was sleeping in the other room because Mommy was snoring. She didn't believe us. 7-year-olds are smarter than we give them credit for. Thanksgiving came and went. We drove to Michael's parents' house and pretended. We held hands when his mother hugged us. We laughed at his father's jokes. We served Emma pumpkin pie and watched her fall asleep on the couch while the adults played cards. We performed marriage the way actors perform a play they've done 1,000 times. Every line memorized, every gesture rehearsed. On the drive home, Emma asleep in the back seat, Michael said, I ended it. I kept my eyes on the road. When? Yesterday. I told her it was a mistake. Was it? He didn't answer. Maybe there was no answer. Maybe the question itself was wrong. That night, he asked if he could move back into our bedroom. I said no, not yet, maybe not ever. He accepted this quietly, the way he accepted everything now, with a docility that felt like penance. December passed in a fog of logistics. We talked about lawyers, but didn't call them. We discussed separation, but didn't separate. We existed in a liminal space where neither staying nor leaving felt possible. So we did both and neither, frozen in amber, waiting for something to break the spell. I found myself reviewing old memories, replaying scenes I'd once trusted. Our anniversary dinner in July. Had he seemed distant? The weekend in September, when he went to that conference in Seattle, had he really been alone? The way he'd started saying, I love you, more often in October. Was that guilt or habit? I couldn't tell anymore. Memory had become unreliable, subject to revision, every moment now suspect. One evening, I opened the budget software and found the rule he'd created, the one that reclassified my salary. I stared at it for a long time, trying to understand what it meant. Was it preparation? Had he been planning to leave, to separate our finances, to make my income seem less permanent, less essential? Or was it something smaller, a misguided attempt at organization that accidentally revealed his state of mind? I deleted the rule. My salary returned to its proper category. Salary, primary, as if it had never been anything else. We didn't divorce, not right away. These things take time, or so everyone told me. Friends who'd been through it said to wait, to see if the marriage could be saved, to think of Emma. His mother called and begged me to forgive him. My mother said I deserved better. Everyone had opinions. No one had answers. Michael moved back into our bedroom in January. Not because I forgave him, but because the guest room felt like a statement neither of us was ready to make permanent. We slept in the same bed, careful not to touch. The space between us, a demilitarized zone we navigated with caution. Some nights, I would wake at 2 or 3 a.m. and listen to him breathe beside me. I'd think about the woman in Denver, Lauren, LH. I never asked to see her picture. I never wanted to know what she looked like, or how they met, or what promises he'd made to her. Knowing wouldn't change anything. The details didn't matter. Only the fact of it mattered. Only the shape of the hole it left. In February, we went to a marriage counselor. She had an office with cream-colored walls and a white noise machine that hummed like the ocean. We sat on opposite ends of a couch that was too soft, sinking into cushions that made everything feel provisional and temporary. The counselor asked us to describe our marriage in one word. Michael said, repairable. I said, over. The counselor nodded as if both answers were correct. We went 3 more times, then stopped. Not because it wasn't helping, but because helping felt beside the point. You can't fix what you no longer trust. You can only decide whether to keep performing the fiction or finally admit it's done. By spring, we'd settled into a new kind of normal. We were roommates who co-parented, dividing labor and responsibilities with the efficiency of strangers. He took Emma to school on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I took her on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We alternated weekends. We communicated through a shared calendar and text messages that read like inter-office memos. Emma has a dentist appointment at 3. Can you take her? The house felt different, lighter somehow, as if removing honesty had also removed weight. We no longer pretended to care about each other's days. We no longer asked questions we didn't want answered. We existed in parallel, 2 lives that occasionally intersected at doorways and dinner tables, polite and distant and profoundly sad. I started balancing the books on Sunday afternoons instead of Thursday nights. A small change. Meaningless, probably, but it felt important to claim a different day, a different ritual, a different version of the person I was becoming. One Sunday in April, I noticed the transfers had stopped. The account labeled LH Consulting showed no new transactions since November. I didn't know if that meant he'd truly ended it or if he'd simply opened a new account I couldn't see. I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. We told Emma in May. She took it better than I expected, and worse than I hoped. She cried for 10 minutes, then asked if she could have a dog. Children process grief in strange ways. We said maybe. We said we'd see. We said we both loved her, and that wouldn't change. She nodded, unconvinced, and went to her room. That night, I heard Michael crying in the guest room. Soft, muffled sounds that came through the wall like a secret. I stood in the hallway, my hand on the doorknob, wanting to go in, wanting to comfort him. But I didn't. Comforting him felt like forgiving him, and I wasn't ready for that. Maybe I never would be. By June, we'd hired lawyers. The divorce was uncontested, which is legal speak for no one fought, no one won. We divided assets with the same precision I'd once used to balance our budget. The house would be sold. Emma would split time between us. Retirement accounts would be divided. Everything had a formula. Everything could be calculated. Except loss. That remained unmeasured. The house sold in August. We moved into separate apartments on opposite sides of town, each of us starting over with halved furniture and shared custody and the strange loneliness that comes from dismantling a life you thought would last. Emma adjusted. Children are resilient in ways adults can't comprehend. She decorated both bedrooms, claimed both spaces as hers. She made new routines. She learned to pack a bag on Thursday nights and unpack it Sunday afternoons. She stopped asking when we'd live together again. I saw Michael at handoffs and school events. We were cordial. We discussed Emma's grades and her piano recital and whether she should try soccer or stick with swimming. We never discussed Lauren. We never discussed what might have been different if he'd told me sooner, or if I'd noticed sooner, or if trust hadn't been so easy to break. Sometimes late at night in my new apartment, I would open the old budget software and look at the spreadsheet from that October evening, the line where my salary had been reclassified. I kept it saved, a kind of evidence, though I didn't know what I was trying to prove. That one small change, consulting and Misc, had been the first crack in the foundation. Everything else had just been gravity doing its work. A year later, Emma asked me why Daddy and I couldn't just try again. We were in my kitchen, the new one, smaller than the old one, with laminate counters instead of granite. She was doing homework at the table while I made dinner, a Tuesday, my night. Sometimes, I said carefully, people hurt each other in ways that can't be fixed. But you still love him, I can tell. I stopped chopping vegetables. What makes you say that? You get sad when you talk about him. Not angry sad, just sad sad. She was right, of course. I did still love him. Not the way I had. not with hope or expectation or the belief that he was mine. But love doesn't disappear just because it's been betrayed. It lingers, a kind of haunting, a memory of what you thought you knew. Love isn't always enough, I told her. That's sad. Yes, I said. It is. Now, 2 years after that October evening, I still balance the books. Different books, different accounts, different life. I track my income and expenses with the same precision I always did, finding comfort in the predictability of numbers, in formulas that always resolve correctly. Sometimes I think about that night, the kitchen, the spreadsheet, the moment I saw my salary reclassified and felt the first tremor of the earthquake to come. I've asked myself 1,000 times if I would have preferred not knowing, if ignorance would have been kinder, but I always come back to the same answer: no. The truth broke me, but it also freed me. I know that now. Michael remarried last month, not to Lauren. I heard through mutual friends that she moved to Portland, started over, got engaged to someone else. He married a woman named Rachel, someone he met through work, someone I've never met and probably never will. Emma likes her. Emma says she's nice. I'm glad. Genuinely. I want him to be happy. I want all of us to be. I've been on a few dates. Nothing serious. I'm not ready for serious. Maybe I never will be. I've learned that loneliness isn't the worst thing. Loneliness is honest. It doesn't pretend to be something it's not. Last Thursday, because old habits die hard and Thursday nights still feel like accounting nights, I was balancing my budget when I noticed a small error, a transaction I'd forgotten to categorize. I moved it to the correct column, watched the formulas recalculate, everything aligning into neat, balanced rows. The numbers told the truth before anyone did. They still do. I've made peace with that, the quiet understanding that some fractures never fully heal, but you learn to carry them. You learn that love can coexist with betrayal, that forgiveness and trust are not the same thing, that you can mourn what you lost while being grateful you survived. This is the legacy of that October evening. I know now that I am someone who looks, someone who asks, someone who doesn't flinch from uncomfortable answers. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's the peace I was looking for all along, not the restoration of what was broken, but the recognition of what remains. The refrigerator hums in my new kitchen. The clock reads 9:17. I close the laptop and sit in the stillness, grateful for the silence, for the solitude, for the simple fact that the numbers finally balance. I never stopped loving him. I just stopped expecting him to be someone he wasn't.